Clerk will call the names of the next pair.
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Tillis.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic? That you bear true faith and allegiance to the same? That you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you're about to enter? So help you God?
I do.
Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you.
The clerk will call the names of the next pair.
Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Warner.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic? That you bear true faith and allegiance to the same? That you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you're about to enter? So help you God?
I do.
Congratulations, Senator. Majority Leader.
I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The absence of a quorum has been suggested. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Braun. Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito, Mr. Carden, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mrs. Feinstein, Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Harris, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Loeffler, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Manchin, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Mr. Moran, Ms. Markowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Portman, Mr. Reed, Mr. Risch, Mr. Romney, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Sass, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Sinema, Ms. Smith, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Ms. Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young.
A quorum is present. Majority Leader.
Very briefly, I simply want to welcome all senators on this first day of the 117th Congress. Today, 6 new members are joining our ranks for the first time. Senators Haggerty of Tennessee, Hickenlooper of Colorado, Lujan of New Mexico, Loomis of Wyoming, Marshall of Kansas, Tuberville of Alabama have been elected to serve the people of their home states. And of course, Senator Kelly of Arizona was sworn in a few weeks ago. We congratulate all our new colleagues, as well as their families. We look forward to the ways in which their unique experiences, their ideas, and their priorities will enrich this institution and strengthen our shared work for the nation. To say the 117th Congress convenes at a challenging time would indeed be an understatement. From political division to a deadly pandemic to adversaries around the world, the hurdles before us are many, and they are serious. But there's also plenty of reason for hope. An optimistic, forward-looking, can-do spirit has been one of our country's most distinctive calling cards since our very earliest days. And with safe and effective vaccines rolling out across our nation every day, I'd say 2021 looks bright already. We gavel in today like 116 prior Senates have gavelled in before us, with plenty of disagreements and policy differences among our ranks, but all swearing the same oath to support and defend the same Constitution, all loving the same country, and all of us committed to do all we can to leave behind an even stronger nation than the one we've been blessed to inherit. So I look forward to the Senate's work these next 2 years. Let's make the American people proud. Now, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of SRES 1, submitted earlier today.
The clerk will report the resolution.
Senate Resolution 1, establishing a committee to inform the President of the United States that a quorum of each House is assembled.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection. Pursuant to Senate Resolution 1, the Chair appoints the Senator from Kentucky, Mr. McConnell, and the Senator from New York, Mr. Schumer, as a committee to join the committee on the part of the House of Representatives to wait upon the President of the United States and inform him that a quorum is assembled and that the Congress is ready to receive any communication he may be pleased to make.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of SRS 2, submitted earlier today.
The clerk will report the resolution.
Senate Resolution 2, informing the House of Representatives that a quorum of the Senate is assembled.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of SRS 3, submitted earlier today.
Clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 3, fixing the hour of daily meeting of the Senate.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of SCON Res 1.
The clerk will report.
SCON Res 1, concurrent resolution to provide for the counting on January 6, 2021 of the electoral votes for President and Vice President of the United States.
Objection to proceeding to the measure? If not, without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent the concurrent resolution be agreed to, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of SCON Res 2.
The Senator wait, please. The Chair appoints the Senator from Missouri, Mr. Blunt, and the Senator from Minnesota, Mr. Klobuchar, Ms. Klobuchar, as tellers on the part of the Senate to count the electoral votes. Senate Majority Leader.
Here. I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of SCON Res 2.
The clerk will report.
SCON Res 2, concurrent resolution extending the life of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies and so forth.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent the concurrent resolution be agreed to. The motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I send to the desk in block 11 unanimous consent requests, and I ask for their immediate consideration in block. I further ask that the requests be agreed to in block. The motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and that they appear separately on the record. Before the chair acts on my requests, I'd like to point out that these requests are routine and done at the beginning of each new Congress.
Is there objection to the reading of the resolutions in block? Yeah, and agreeing to the consent in block. Without objections, so ordered.
Mr. President, I have a resolution at the desk.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 4, fixing the hour of daily meeting of the Senate.
I ask for its immediate consideration and to send the resolution over under the rule. I object to my own request.
Objection is heard. So the resolution will go over under the rule.
Not through now.
Okay, under previous order, the leadership's time is reserved. Under previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Mr. President, can we have order in the Senate?
Senate will be in order. Senate Majority Leader.
I understand there's a bill at the desk, and I ask for its first reading.
The clerk will read the title of the bill for the first time.
S11, a bill to provide for an exception to a limitation against appointment of persons as Secretary of Defense and so forth.
The Senate,
Mr. President, can we have
Senate
order?
will be in order. Senate Majority Leader.
I now ask for a second reading, and in order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I object to my own request.
Objection haven't been heard.
Okay, colleagues, we're about to wrap up here.
The bill
Can we have
will
order in the Senate?
the bill will receive a second reading in the next legislative day. Okay. Hey, can we have order in the Senate, please? Can we have order in the Senate, please? Senate Majority Leader.
I would just say to everyone that we're about to go out of session, so there'll be plenty of time for congratulations and comments. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 12:30 Wednesday, January 6th. Further, following the prayer and pledge, the morning hour be deemed expired, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day. Finally, following leader remarks, the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection, so ordered.
So if there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask to stand adjourned under the previous order.
The Senate stands in adjournment until Wednesday at 12:30.